To an exciting launch of this wonderful anthology by Great Weather for Media called Beacon Radiant. And today we have 8 writers. We have some fiction writing and some poetry to listen to this afternoon, and we're very excited to be doing that. First off, I wanted to introduce you to the other editors who are here today. We've got Thomas Fukaloro, Jane Ormeron, who's running all kinds of things over there on Facebook, and also the person who designs our covers and has done an amazing job. And David Lawton is here today. Not all of our editors, but some wonderful ones today, and some writing that you're going to enjoy immensely. When we put this anthology together, the world was a little bit of a different place, I think. But I wanted to read a little bit something from the introduction that can put us back into that spot there. Through hard times, artists, including those you'll find here, intensify the work of making sense of the past, living fully to find meaning in the present, and imagining a future. They struggle, as humans have always done, to redefine themselves and reality, their relationships to each other and to the natural world. Sharing a fundamental need for guidance and hope, they aspire to what we've chosen to call a beacon radiant, beautiful though enigmatic, different for every witness, irresistible. Again, welcome and thank you. Our first reader today is also the first piece in the anthology. Piece called Swimming Home, and I'm going to read her bio. Catherine Gammon is author of the short story collection, The Gunman and the Carnival, Baobab Press, 2024, and several novels, including The Martyrs, The Lovers, 55 Fathoms Publishing, and China Blue, Bridge 8 Press. Her fiction has appeared in literary magazines for many years and has received support from the NEA and NIFA, among others, as well as from writers' colonies, including the Fine Arts Work Center in Providence, VCCA, Yaddo, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Gerasi? You could help me with that one. Okay, welcome, Catherine, and please correct my pronunciation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's Gerasi.
Thank you.
It's also Provincetown, not Providence, an old mix-up that many people have done over the years.
Okay.
So I will read first Swimming Home, the piece in Beacon Radiant, and then a couple other short pieces. I should say I write these as fiction, but they are sounding and seeming less and less like stories these days. So I find them a little mysterious in terms of genre. So here we go. Swimming home. You were swimming home with a bag on your head. You were swimming home because the boat sank. You were swimming home to get the butter you forgot. You were swimming home because no one knew you were away, so no one could miss you. You were swimming home in thunder and lightning and didn't get out of the water because you knew you were dead. You were swimming home because your country was at war and the streets were full of men and guns. You were swimming home because walking wasn't possible anymore. You were swimming home, dragging a bag of memories behind you. They weighed you down until you let them go, and then you were swimming home empty-handed. You were swimming home until you couldn't swim any longer, and there was no home left anywhere to go to. You were swimming home when they pulled you out of the water and wrapped you in a towel, and you told them you were swimming home. You had to swim home one last time. But they didn't hear you, couldn't hear you. You were right the first time. You knew your own condition better than they did, better than anyone. You wanted them to let you go, to send you home, but they didn't understand. They did what they thought was best, was right, the only thing they knew to do, to save what they thought was your life. You told them no, but they didn't hear you. They dragged you along to wherever they were determined to drag you, but swimming was over. Home was over. Life was over. You were swimming, and then you weren't. You were alive, and then you weren't. You were you, And then you weren't. Still, you saw them trying to dry you, trying to warm you, trying to wake you up. Never, you said, but they didn't hear you. Nothing was left, not one thing. Never, you said again and again. Never, never, never. Gargoyle, reading and rain, checked out, as if she's gone to the beach for the day, as if there's a beach to go to, rain or no rain, in the heart of the ocean of time. Every moment an ocean, every little fruit fly buzzing around her face, her hands, breeding in the banana plants brought indoors for winter months ago, warming with the coming, not yet arrival of spring. So many tiny fruit flies that she starts to enjoy the killing, even as she sees the enjoyment along with regret and shame. Each little life a bounty, a world. In its own skin, a mighty gargoyle, monster, fearless in its living, and she, the creature's monster. It wants to live, and the next wants to live, and still, one after another, they come, drawn to her heat or her light, or the bright open page of the book in her hands. They want to live, and still they will keep at her until she gets the message. She has taken so many lives today, 10, 12, 20. She begins to imagine intention, the tiny heroes lining up one by one in protest, volunteers for immolation. Two more. Ambassador, a dream, but who wants to hear another dream? A little watering in the garden, an investigation into growing ginger, mistakes made, lots of emails. A skinny young poet about to become U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Congratulations and wonder. Not the grizzled world traveler the poet is today, but the boy he was 50 years ago. A label bothers her skin, pricks at her like a needle. Her other sweaters have tiny holes at the back of the neck where she's clipped their pinchy labels out. You're going to the UN as ambassador? Dissonance great enough to reveal to her that she's dreaming, and she is, or was. A scheduling conflict, stress of recollection, more emails. Still in dreams, she tells herself to send him a message, write via Instagram, let him know about this dream of his ambassadorship. Simple as they'll be, she hasn't done her taxes yet, anxieties of forgetting hour by hour one little thing or the next. By the time she remembers the day gone, she knows only the moment's image, the skinny poet, his wild and thick black hair, his appointment, her astonishment. Look at us, she could write to him, still here, when every day so many are taken. The life of privilege. You look great in a proper suit. And the last one. Thank you. Breadcrumbs, Hannah and Joe. 1. Hannah and Joe went to school one day, school one day, school one day, and only Joe came home. He followed a trail of bodies to the door. Sound stopped, his sneakers covered in blood. He followed footsteps ahead of his own, bloody footsteps. He couldn't hear a thing. Somewhere far away, he saw a person he thought was his mother, but he wasn't sure. He had an idea what a mother was, and he wasn't sure this person matched. When the bloody footprints ran out, he stopped. She swarmed him. Sound surged in with her perfume, her soft skin. 2. One of us is lost in time, the other lost in space. Briefly, we intersect, such a moment, and no way to find it again. No trail of stardust to guide us, no clock ticks or calendar or almanac, no rocket scientist or futurist to point the way. Sit still, one thinks. When lost, stay put and wait. The other hears the thought, but with a question how this works in time. Isn't to sit still in time to die? One thinks, find the place, wait there. Return, thinks the other, to the moment. Memory is all we have. 3, we search back through notes, photos, as if to discover traces, crumbs, a pathway home to abundance. Change used to mean more kales and mustards, more peas, more strawberries, more tomatoes, variety, more coexisting with less with more. Now the world is broken. Thin soil, scrawny plants, meager fruits. Was the longer, colder winter to blame? The erratic spring, invasion of the wrong kind of worm, or age itself, life worn thin, along with us, a loss of hunger, forgetting to sing. Even the cat can't be bothered anymore to stalk a sparrow, to catch one brilliant bird. Hannah and Joe went to school one day, and only Joe came home. And that's it.
Thank you so much. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you have another one?
No, I was going to just say you encouraged me to put a few things in the chat. So I'm putting a link to my recent collection of stories and to my Substack, where there's more about me.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Yeah. And thanks for starting us off in a dreamy kind of wondering sort of way about the future. It was lovely. It's absolutely lovely. Next, we have David Haynes, and do I see you, David? I'm not seeing you on the screen. Oh, there you are.
There I am.
Okay, great. All right. This anthology, as in all, we always have someone who's interviewed, and David was interviewed by a former editor, Lyndsey Ellis, who interviewed him. Did a wonderful interview, which begins on page 49, and I'm going to read the bio from that. David Haynes in conversation with Lyndsey Ellis. David Haynes is a professor emeritus of English at Southern Methodist University, where he directed the creative writing program for 10 years. For the past 23 years, he has also been on the faculty of the MFA program, The Writers at Warren Wilson College. He is the author of 7 novels for adults and 5 books for younger readers, most recently A Star in the Face of the Sky, which was published in 2013 by New Rivers Press. His forthcoming book is Martha's Daughter, a novella and stories. And I might add that A Star in the Face of the Sky is just fantastic. I mean, as all your work is, and we look forward to hearing more from you, David, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much. So honored to be here, and was so honored to be invited by Lyndsey to do the interview, and by Mary to be a part of the reading today. I'm going to throw this little plug in here. This is really my most recent book. This is right by my side, which is a Penguin classic. I just love it. You know, it's one of the ones for the Black Spine. And this is the 30th anniversary edition of that book. And so I'm sort of transitioning from reading from that to reading from Martha's Daughter, which is due in the spring, and looking forward to sort of sharing that book with the world. When I talked to Lyndsey about Martha's Daughter, we talked a lot about community and how grounded the book is in St. Louis, and the scene I'm going to read takes place in St. Louis. I was going to throw this in there with this sort of one very, very strange, odd coincidence in the world. Many years ago, long before she lived there and long before she was born, actually, I used to walk by the house that Lyndsey lives in every day on my way to and from high school. And so, usually running in either direction, either because I wanted to I was late to school every day, and or I wanted to get home in time to watch my soap opera. So the scene I'm going to read from Martha's Daughter takes place on the day that the central character and narrator in the story, Cynthia Garrison, her mother's passed away. And she's going with a work colleague to basically to the funeral home to claim her mother's body. So it takes place at a Chinese buffet, which actually is this whole other phenomena here in St. Louis, which I don't even want to get into, but it's a big deal here in St. Louis. Oh, look, Janine says, we got that same Chinese buffet down by our place. The Camry is oddly magnetized to where her finger points, and I take the exit. I didn't mean to suggest, Janine protests, which I wave away. A little lunch make this all the smoother for Janine and for me. I pay for us both, grab a platter the size of a hubcap, and build a plate in homage to my mother. All her favorites, some greasy-looking egg foo young patties, a few chunks of fried something or the other with pieces of onions and red pepper adhering to their sticky shine, a tower of crab rangoon, which I slather with a sauce the color of a post-nuclear dawn. Janine, by contrast, works her way around the entire buffet, the spoonful of everything strategy. When she is finished, there is no telling what is what or when one might even begin to eat such a mess. But she digs in with the gusto of a girl who grew up on boxed macaroni and cheese and not nearly enough of it. Yum, she comments on one bite, and yum, she comments on the next. The food is okay. One thing Martha Garrison knew was Chinese food, and this is miles below her standard. I can hear her now. Too much cornstarch in this gravy, or fried rice don't mean boiled in grease rice. Back in her lucid day, Mother would ring the office Friday at 4 like clockwork. Stop up at that Chinaman's on Woodson Road on your way over here and get my usual. Remind him extra egg and onion in the rice. Ah, the casual racism of our parents. Enchanting, isn't it? That I might have plans for an evening, or that they might not have included a stop at the Chinaman's or at her house, were never part of Martha Garrison's calculation. They all knew her, all these Chinamen, and all the storefront duck and noodle shops between Pagedale and Creve Coeur, and their wives too. How's your mama, they'd say. Say hi to your mother. Tell Martha to come and see me. She'd be constantly on the outs with one or another of them for shorting her order or scrimping on the shrimp. And then the calls stopped coming, and Martha Garrison took to wandering, and I had my Fridays to myself. I spear an onion and find a bit of the tough white root that hadn't been trimmed away. Mother would be up in that restaurant, in that kitchen, and there would be hell to pay. Janine thrust in the general direction of my face, something brown with a clear glaze. What's this, she asks. Did you get any of this? I shake my head. Because it sure is good. This sauce is like lemon or orange or something. She bites a huge hunk off the glob and examines the remainder as if it were a lab specimen. Definitely orange, she declares. I smile at her triumph, and with her lips, she snatches into her maw the rest of the meat from the fork. She's a savorer, this Janine, something she'd share in common with my mother. Every bite is lip-smacking delicious. She has an entire repertoire of, thankfully, mostly inaudible noises to signal the pleasure this food provides her. Her eyes roll to the sky in ecstatic gratitude until the lids lower to dreamy half-mast. Tell me not to go back for seconds, she orders me, but I encourage her to knock herself out and blame my own lack of appetite on a large breakfast that I did not, in fact, have. Janine Chalifour procures a fresh plate and horns her way into the appetizer aisle to the clear consternation of a stooped-over gentleman who had been waiting patiently for his egg rolls. At first, I think it is Mr. Barnett from over on the next court that she has cut in front of, but a second look reveals that he is darker skinned, that this man is darker skinned and a bit rounder in his middle than my mother's old neighbor. I see them everywhere, I think, those folks from back in the neighborhood, and sometimes, in fact, I do run into them for real, but it's never the old timers like the Wilsons or the Barnetts, the Washburns or old Joe Cowsett. It's the ones who I grew up with. I bump into at the gym or the nail place or stopping into Walgreens for a greeting card. Oh, hey, girl, they say, Cynthia or Lillian or Valerie or Dot. They tell me how good I'm looking and how well they hear I'm doing over here in Clayton, and they catch me up on all the news from the hood. This one's been real sick, and so had another baby. And how about you? You settled down? Settling down, they ask, as if I were a pot left too long on the stove. No, girl, no settling for me, I tell them. Mother made damn sure of that, but I never tell them that part. I scan the buffet area on the off chance there might be anyone else from Breckenridge Hills grazing away, anyone who might wonder what I'm doing here on a day like this. But all I see is Janine with a pile of pot stickers and another mound of fried rice. Thank you.
Yeah, I love all that food, David. And thank you for putting up. I love Right by My Side as well. We've all been through teenage years, but you need to go back and read I Love Right by My Side and relive it. That's another great one.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you for that, and good luck with the new book.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Taneesh Kaur, and I think I've got your. Hey, Taneesh. I'm going to read your bio. And we're going to hear some poetry. Taneesh Kaur is a US-born Punjabi teaching artist based in San Francisco. Her visual art has shown in galleries around California and has received praise from the Luxembourg Art Prize 2023. Her poetry appears in journals and anthologies around the nation, most recently in Great Weather for Media's Beacon Radiant. Her full-length poetic memoir, The Wing, was published in 2024 by Collapse Press. Taneesh has a master's in linguistics from San Francisco State University and is currently an MFA candidate at University of San Francisco. You can see more of her work in English and Spanish at she'll put this in the chat, taneeshcantos.com. Welcome.
Thank you. It's always really lovely to be with Great Weather for Media folks, and I'm so grateful to be in this. And so yeah, the set that I kind of organized is based on this poem in the book. A body born a hobby, soft and naked and pink, scrunched up so small and wailing as we take our first breath. They say we're closer to our past lives, as newborns screaming for the cradle of the womb. Our talent fresh in the mind and muscles take us back to who we are or were. Life swirls us into what we think we need to be and whittles us down to who we are and why we're here. Thriving is a tricky thing. The way freedom escapes the flimsy layer of social dominance, or we see beyond the narrow box of where we are. Ascension. You have to work at it, or else get swept up in the pendulum. I see myself a newborn, loyal, loving, laughing, dodging the pendulum amid clutter, waiting for my coffee to brew. And then I have, let's see, I just had it, hang on. Okay. Yeah, all right. Nani was the type who could calm you in a storm in Chandigarh. Or maybe it was an outage only. We sat in darkness with candles, lights out on the whole block. I must have been 4. It must have been that trip. I ate way too many peanuts, threw up in the bed in the middle at midnight while sleeping between 2 cousins, heads, feet, along the width to fit 4 girls. And I threw up and went back to sleep without cleaning it or telling anyone. Mamaji called me Tina Munim, a famous actress of the era, but I didn't know that, just happy to be noticed, singled out for something positive. When my mom was alive and we danced to Madonna's Where's the Party? Jumping on the bed, we sang it like, Where's the party? Party means poop. In the dark, my nanny explained she had water under her skin, and it hurt her very much. And we sat. I looked, touched. Her protruding veins said, yeah. I asked my Mamiji years and years later, 2.5 decades later. It ended up being arthritis, but I always liked the way she explained it to my 4-year-old brain while we sat in the dark, feeling like it was something I get to do, us girls. 3 generations huddled on my nanny's bed when my mom was alive and we danced. Light, shadow, candle wall wonder. For my Nanaji, my Mero, my mother, my Nana and Naniji, feed me sweet words and whispers, shared memories from my Nana's favorite color on us. My red orphan Annie dress, matching his red turban. By the corded tan phone hanging on the wood-paneled wall, he teaches me how to draw peacocks. And I practice and show him, his smile pushing up, his silver mustache, netted beard. His last visit after my mother's death, a few years before his own. Her absence screams through the house from silverfish and centipedes stampeding over the fireplace at dark. I make orange juice popsicles in the afternoons, toothpicked in ice trays. I don't give him one until he asks. I have no one, no support. I disappear into books until 4 a.m., a lonely time. I have no one and push him away, and now he gives me gifts, presents, reminding me that men can give. $300 splayed outside my elevator in the lobby. I hide it behind a bird ceramic, under the lobby table, against the long wall, but it follows me. $200 unclaimed in the ATM of a local bar. He gives me presents, attention. He's family. The words fly at me through the ether when I want to believe the worst of my love. Living with the dead, it turns my curdling blood into feet of fancy, flourishing fantasy. I thread arms with him and pull him close. Lotus flowers line my sighs of stillness. And then I think I'll close. I'm going to close with the one in the book. The steam of cardamom, ladle for ladle. We pass our bowls around the rice of garlic, of coconut oil. We stir our ancestors, motherland, other side of the world. The spinach they freed from the earth, the paneer they milked, we cube, the bread we break, so soft in our fingers, the naan, we tear and cone and spoon our rice with sag and shovel it all in our mouths. The taste of the ground we tended for generations, so far from us now, this distant place we call home. Thank you.
Well, that was lovely, Taneesh. Thank you. Yeah, I could see everyone really getting into a zone there. Lovely. Um, Next up, we have Adrian Potter, another poet. Excited to hear. So many of you, we're just hearing for the first time. We read your work and we love it, and then we get to hear you, and that's just like a icing on the cake. It's wonderful. Another food image. Adrian S. Potter, winner of the 2022 Lumiere Review Prose Award, writes in Minnesota when he's not busy, silently judging your beer selection and record collection. So come on. He is the author of 3 collections of poetry, prose, hybrid work, including And the Monster Swallows You Whole, Stillhouse Books 2023, and Field Guide to the Human Condition, CW Books 2022. Welcome, Adrian. Adrian, we can't hear you. Can you turn your volume up? Mm-hmm. We had this problem once before, Adrian. You can do it. I think you have to go into your directions and
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Good, because I was going to give
Perfect.
you some messed up directions. Okay.
I'm a pretty loud guy, so for you guys to not hear me really surprised me. Okay.
All righty.
All
Hear you
right.
now.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to read and listen at this event. I appreciate being part of it, and I always take like things from this and just get humbled because inspired to write after I hear everybody's insights. So appreciate it. The poem I'm going to share from Beacon Radiant is titled My Delayed Response to Your Outrage, and my hoodie that says Black Lives Matter. It should be a pretty short read, so I want to maybe give a little context about what spawned it. In this modern world, I think we've all been there, especially in this moment where people seem to like to offend people more than they like to support, where some disrespectful comment or action comes out of nowhere and blindsides you. You don't know how to respond or react, and there's that subtle regret of not acting in the moment. This scenario is challenging for me. I pride myself on always having a witty response or a sharp retort for everything. Silence is not my virtue, but for whatever reason, I didn't have a comeback scripted for the day in the store when this person nastily commented about the interference or the inference of my self-worth on my shirt. And I regretted that. So like any decent writer, I wrote about it. First to seek catharsis, but the end message seemed like something that might touch others in these unprecedented times where it's become common practice to belittle people who have different backgrounds, identities, feelings, thoughts. So this poem is a derivative of all that systematic chaos. I was silent momentarily, but I did and do have something to say, and so I hope it resonates with all of you. My delayed response to your outrage and my hoodie that says Black Lives Matter. Perhaps the concept of compassion can only appear after acts of callousness. Perhaps the idea of inclusion only gets noted by those in the margins. Perhaps thoughts of caring arise only after refusing to give a fuck about other people. Perhaps you should listen as I whisper grace into the ears of the wicked, even if my words may sting. I hope this message reaches you in time. Perhaps empathy could come first. Perhaps your peace cannot be found until I unearth mine. Perhaps mercy could shine light on the shade in your soul. Perhaps you hear an imaginary threat concealed in the written declaration that my existence has relevance, and the resentment that you display comes from overlooking my value before you acknowledge yours. So I don't want to take too much time, but I'll share one more poem that I was writing around that same time. And it's one of those that, everybody talks about the thoughts and prayers when tragedy happens. And so I went on another rant about such things because the thoughts and prayers mean something, but they don't create the value that they want. So in the end, I probably don't solve anything by writing this, but it is authentic feeling of how I felt at the time, at least. So poem's called, "And What Good Are All Those Thoughts and Prayers?" And what good are all those thoughts and prayers if our world keeps falling apart? After all, no one can even recall why the flags remain at half-staff, which means we are either suffocating our memories or letting our memories smother us. We live only by that which still allows us to survive. The flag, for instance, triggers us to either sense pride or grief, depending on how high it flies and what news keeps trending on the internet. I suppose we are all being carefully asphyxiated by our recollections, online troll postings, body cam footage, school shootings devised by tormented souls who execute others to ease their pain. And when their aches persist, they turn a gun on themselves, and their suicides become symbolic of our country. We might pledge allegiance to whatever wind-blown fabric we must to continue breathing with knees pressed against our necks. We may stand and salute as the anthem gets played, knowing we remain victims of a recycled melody. We listen as the flag flails in the breeze, and we whistle back in memory of a friend who got buried but didn't make the headlines. Here we are again, our mouths agape in shock and awe. Synthetic outrage gets passed off as genuine emotion. And maybe things have always been this way, and we've just recently grown disenchanted with feigning optimism. We witnessed far too many tragedies to know when the mourning should cease. People claim the first wholly American style of music to gain traction and recognition across the world was the blues. Maybe it's because the blues speak of sunshine and storms from the same mouth. Maybe it's because each refrain feels like another late night prayer kneeling on the line between life sentence and death penalty. Maybe it's because they preach two-headed sermons, spitting scripture and blasphemy in the same breath. But if we keep singing these same blues, this nation will become nothing but water and sky, polluted in memory of whoever. Our blood will run forever. These blues will never die. Thank you.
Whatever your motivation, Adrian, keep writing those poems, speaking that truth, strong words. And we need to hear it, and it's timely, and it's not going away. Thank you. All right, we're going to switch over and have some fiction now. Someone who's appeared in Great Weather for Media anthology before, and proudly so, Tobey Hiller, and I'm going to read her bio. Tobey Hiller's fiction, flash, and poetry have appeared in a wide variety of journals and anthologies. She's the author of a novel, 4 books of poetry, and a collection of magic realist surreal fiction called Flight Advice, a Fabulary, by Unlikely Books, New Orleans. She's recently completed a collection of realist stories and is currently at work on a group of transformation tales involving hybrid creatures. That sounds great. Her new poetry collection, and Ms. Before Anything Is Dust, was recently named one of 3 finalists for the Catamaran Literary Reader 2024 Poetry Book Prize. Welcome, Tobey.
Thank you, Mary. Is this loud enough? Can you hear me fine? Good. I'm so happy to be here amongst all of you and listen to this great stuff. So I feel honored and glad to be here. I'm going to first read, actually, I'm going to read the piece from Beacon Radiant and another very short piece, which was published somewhere else, and a poem. And we'll go from there. This piece is called Duckweed and Hemlock and came about after I had been to New Orleans for a book launch there. Duckweed and Hemlock. Selena had advised the Hemlock Channel, 3 right turns and a curve like an eyebrow, just follow the biggest hemlock. But in the night bayou, all the channels curved and all the hemlock loomed, so Ramona followed the duckweed instead. Alligators watched the boat pass, their eyes like floating marbles on the moonlight surface of the water. Owls hooted and wooed, bullfrogs croaked, honeybees slept gold in their tree hives. In the dark, her bruises matched Shadow's colors. The channel curved like an eyebrow and widened into pool, and there it stood in moonlight's bright silence. Selena had called it the Queen's Tree. It stood royal above the water's stillness, wide, whitened branches hung with beads, glass shards, birds of folded paper, keys, jewelry, bits of ribbon, and lace. A trumpet lay in a high fork near a doll-sized rusted bedstead. She brought her canoe in close to the tree and pushed her wish, wrapped in a $20 bill, into the trunk's darkest hole where it could not drop into water and disappear into sludge. Get me out. No, please, no careful. She couldn't bear any more of that. Going back, the duckweed had floated into different shapes, like gnats or clouds, but she found her way, no problem, drew the boat up to the dock, tied it, thanking any lucky stars that watched, and drove back, not knowing exactly what or how, but okay, she'd done it. He was standing in the driveway, his hands on his hips, staring up at the roof. Flames spouted out of the chimney, climbing in curls. How had that happened? Sparks sputtered off the gouts of flame, drawing firefly arcs in the air. Some settled on the roof. She smelled ash and cinder and rutilated wind. The woman who lived next door, the one who never said hello or even looked at her, ran out her front door in her bathrobe, screaming, "Fire!" He turned then and saw the car and began running toward her, his mouth opening into the shape of curses. But Ramona had turned sharp left in the same instant and was 2 houses away already. He ran after the car, his hands pumping in balled fists, his face ablaze, just as red as the flames now beginning to dribble in bright looping threads onto the roof. Stop! Where do you think you're? What the fuck? Get back here, Mona, you idiot. That's my car. Stop, you, Mona. She could hear every word, including the invisible ones, clear as thunder before lightning. She knew just what he would scream at her if the neighbors weren't listening, if he weren't out here on the sidewalk with other eyes on him. Get over here with my fucking car, you fucking useless piece of bitch. But these words, plastered all over the inside walls of the house, couldn't catch up to her out here. They choked into cinders in the smoke. She drove just slowly enough to tempt him, her teeth clenched. She could see him panting and flailing in the rearview mirror, along with slow slices of the neighbors' front yards, and farther back the astounding roof, now a field of roar and blaze, eating the sky. Even now, falling behind, no way to catch up, sweat popping out on his face, he looked large, imminent, and some piece of her mind, not a small piece, torpedoed in, "You're to blame. You did this. It's your fault." Again. But then, oddly, she heard her own laugh. She looked down at her hands on the steering wheel, their flaming fingernails, knuckles not even white. Jesus, she heard Selena's voice. Will you stop with the constant, it's me, if I hadn't done this, if I just remembered to say that, such crap. Take a look at the actual facts, will you? She hadn't lit any fires, she knew that. But maybe they just flowed out of her own thought, using the painful and insistent spot behind her right ear as exit. Some moments explode into conflagration. They do. Then what? Her hands on the steering wheel felt so relaxed, and now her body felt the car, the scene, the whole story from duckweed and hemlock as now to hers, to now as hers. It all blazed with intention, astounding as any midnight sun, proved it, lighting up the dark of then and next as clearly as a blazing house. So, whether or not she believed in the Queen's tree, and although she knew perfectly well how cheap he was about stuff like having the chimney cleaned, she wasn't going to tell Serena that. Because, okay, no pleas, no explanations or second guesses involved anymore. And well, here it was, the burning door she was ready to walk through. She speeded up. She turned the corner. She leaned right and looked in the rearview mirror at her own face. Smoke in her eyes and in her nostrils, but she was smiling. Um, so the next one is was published in Fabulous Words and Art, and it's called Memory of the Future. I think you'll recognize who it's about. It's written actually a while ago, but unfortunately, it's still applicable. Memory of the Future. He sat in a gilt chair. His chariot had stalled in a rancid fog, which reduced visibility to 20 feet. Tule fog, he shouted. It will clear in a minute. If it doesn't, we'll sue. But particles of soot rained from a black sky, and the coal tar in our nostrils, along with the stench, made it hard to breathe. Do you like my helmet? His smile showed a flash of dagger tooth. Yes, 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 the crowd shouted in unison. 4 or 5 people collapsed from the effort. Do you like my scepter? Beautiful, huh? He lifted his golf club. More affirmative shouting. The crowd stood on the prone bodies of the people who had collapsed, gasping like beached fish beneath the trample. Do you like my cabinet? He opened a box on the seat next to him. Inside were 3 small figures about the size of Punch and Judy marionettes, 2 men and a woman. One, a gray-haired man in rumpled clothes and glasses, looked up and grinned. He raised a blunt-nosed handgun and pulled the trigger. Bang! Out shot a white flag with the words "Heilit" into the air. The crowd roared, right hand soared upward into a forest of fingers. The second man, in a dark suit, didn't smile or move. He was sitting on a large pile of money. He stared at a phone in his left hand, frowning. In his right hand, he held a rumpled newspaper. Or was that a ball of caramel corn? These 2 disappeared in a ball of smoke. Magic? The third little puppet, the woman, was blonde in the same way platinum and yellow diamonds are blonde. In fact, maybe her hair was made of Rumpelstiltskin's pale promise. Where the needle was, no one knew. She was dressed in a white dress, trimmed with crystals, and her belt was rust. She smiled and stepped out of the cabinet in 4-inch heels onto his lap, careful to miss the places that might cause pain or some kind of enlightenment. She nestled in, purring like a cat. Everyone cheered. She waved and held up a contract in Chinese, or maybe Cyrillic. In the distance, the moan of ice, the roar of fires, the long howl of a wolf. The trees said words they had reserved for warning. The sky ached a certain gray. Minerva, in the form of an owl, entered on stage left. She flew low and in utter silence over him, over the crowd, and out of the picture. God knows we have to go through it again, I guess. And the last one I'm going to read, this is from the manuscript that Mary mentioned from the bio. It's called Before Anything is Dust. The manuscript is called Before Anything is Dust, and it's a collection of poetry. And it's called The Closing of the South Park Road. I live in the Bay Area, and there's a large park that exists behind Oakland and Berkeley. It's called Tilden Park. It's got lots of roads in it. and it's got a road in it called the South Park Road. The closing of the South Park Road happens every year, just when the light grows lucid, forgiving nothing and disappearing into beauty. On these fall days, the air over the water opens into a hard, wise body lying low and immortal over everything it loves. And during this particular light, and clocked by leaves darking into mold, the brown newts that live in the park and on Mount Diablo appear in droves, emerging from any under, all shining and sheeny and lacking in corners, as though made from foam spawn or grown secret as mushrooms in some place wet and between we'd never imagined, right there in our own backyards. We think of the South Park Road as ours. After all, we built it. But they cross it as though it's theirs, clogging its black with their brown, insisting bodies, slicking it with newt travel, faster than snails, leaving no trail, but something more like water than our flesh is. They cannot get enough of whatever it is they're after, each other or life or coupling or the deepness of a brown and shining place, the egg place, the smelly meat sweet of mold, those little toes articulate and too easily smashed. So now, this time of year, they close the road. Before anything is dust, it lies low and immortal in desire's long body, with light riding on its back, and disappears. That's it.
Thank you, Tobey. We can tell that you're a poet and a prose writer. It's like poetry. I could have just said, here's Tobey going to read some poetry. It's beautiful. And if you would like to paste into the messages where we can find that tree, so we can put our wishes into the tree and our wishes can come true too. It'll be very nice. I'd like to wish away a few people, not mentioning any names. Okay. And next we have Ed Go. So excited to hear you, Ed. Ed is keeping me laughing on Facebook and in person. Your wonderful energy, Ed.
Oh, thank you.
It's absolutely the truth. We all need that. Ed Go is a Chinese, Filipino, Portuguese, English, Scottish, Irish American writer raised in Massachusetts, Virginia, Alaska, Hawaii, and Connecticut. A former video store clerk, school bus driver, CDL, driving instructor, garbage truck driver, exterminator, phone book deliverer, mystery shopper, and lead singer guitar player in a punk folk band. Ed currently lives and works as a teacher in Brooklyn. I'm glad that you put teacher last. As a former teacher, way to go, Ed. Where was that? His chapbook, Deleted Scenes from the Autobiography of Ed Go, as told by Napoleon, it was published by Other Rooms Press. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Ed.
Can you hear me? Wait a minute. Hello. You can hear me. Okay, gotcha. Let's see. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Great Weather, for publishing my work and having me here today. I'm Ed Go, and I'm going to read some poems. You Gave Me a Blue, Part 2. It broke. I never know what to do with a broken thing, like when my VCR broke and I didn't know what to do, so I sold it to some chump who needed a VCR and felt bad. I chumped him, but it turned out he wanted a broken VCR, so who's the chump after all? It's only natural we should try to unload our shit on whoever's willing to be unloaded on. At the time, my monkey broke and I didn't know what to do, so I sold it to the cavalry who thought it was a weapon. But how was I to know they needed a broken monkey, or that monkeys can be fixed, or that monkeys can be weaponized, or that colonels could be promoted based on simian acquisition? Which reminds me of the other time when my Thomas broke and I didn't know what to do, so I sold it to a clock mechanic who said he could repurpose it and use it for the betterment of everyone concerned. But how the hell did I know that his purpose was malignant or that Thomases were radioactive when broken at the circus? If I'd known that, I would have never taken my Thomas to a circus and never would have thrown it at the guy who was whipping the lion. How was I to know it was his job to whip the lion? How was I to know it was his job to whip the lion? And who the hell would take a job involving whipping a lion? In the interview, they ask him, hey, have you ever whipped a lion? Or maybe it's just a question on the application. How many years of experience do you have whipping lions? If I had known it was an actual job, I might have chosen another profession. I think I could have had a meaningful career as the guy who whips the lions. Or how about that time my actual broke and I didn't know what to do, so I sold it to a dentist who said he would use it to fill his patient's holes. But I told him I didn't want to know anything about his patient's holes, so he instead filled me in on all of his own holes. And I told him I had had enough to think about my own holes, and that's when I realized I could have filled up my own holes with a monkey and a VCR, or maybe just a Thomas. But no, my holes aren't fillable, is what the dentist told me. So I went home and sank my teeth into the most recent yellow you gave me. But when the blue you gave me broke, I knew just what to do. I did it without hesitation. But now the yellow is leaking. Thank you. This is Portrait of Your Mom in Tight Pants, published this year in Beacon Radiant. I don't know what page it's on. Portrait of Your Mom in Tight Pants. It's your mom. It's your mom. A possession in green, polka dots on purple mounds around her harness. Her, your, and their, as his and her, are on the table, there upon a wood-like table, barely able to be fairly took. And what about that golden, pleasing, she who walks on what is walked on, talks of talking point, at justice, accuses lumber of being splinter, uses glue as illicit substance, binges winter in off-season, thinks it's winter in September, lingers on horizon, shaking, stubs her finger on a socket, rubs her eyes in pickle jelly, luminous like sacrilegious post-its, posted on her doorframe, reading as if Herman Melville wrote them there along the doorframe, nailed them deep into the doorframe. And you come reading all the words there, posted all around the doorstep. Winter came as you were doing, winter came, what that was, that which you were doing when winter arrived, but thinking summer. You saw her in her green and purple, you from whom she took life's purpose, she from whose opening you crawled out into the gutless world, the cracked world that's cracked and feeble, cracked as earth in all its faults and its faults that move us to the purpose, to the fountains, cracked foundations, all its cracks and its crevices that take us to her and your, and her, your, and their, its credence to our, and his, and her, and his, her, and their, and your, its credence takes us to that horizon, its shores of oceans, it's still by brushstrokes. I carved my name in her face. There's no precedent for this. Once I carved it in my wrist. It didn't take, so I carved it in the bone, the funny bone. The one mom told us leave alone. It gets its groove on where it aches. It didn't take to bone or bladder, nor fish nor flesh. Didn't matter. Didn't take to brick or bread, so I carved it in my boot. But my boot was made of cow, so it grazed as milk makes money. Then it flaked off foam and moo, so I left it on the floor and reached out for the mutton, much easier for the pairings. Then I dropped it behind the curtain where it's still, but forever hidden. Once I carved it in my cousin. He didn't like it as I thought he wouldn't. And shame is such a mooted gesture. I'm sure we'll come to it this future. Once we cut it in the cotton, we shared it for a weekend twice. Once I caught a cunning huntress. Her sweet was resting on my jacket. We wake Wednesdays with ammonia scenting all our sweat and swelling. But the carving that I've given now is washing out of the tincture. And the turnout they were thwarting burns inside its crevice, reaching out to grab my blunder. Gives a tug, it makes a charm, says she misses Mississippi, misses missing me that much. Says she lost so much passion when she played the virgin. Mom says she loses each day passing. When she thinks about her dad, she says 3 times she lost her cordial, once to her brother, that doesn't count, once to me in the place last summer, once to Ariadne in a fountain in Rome in 1979, in spring, in a panic, in the rain. Things that are not interesting and why, and also things that are and why not. Red rhinoceros is interesting, not because it is red. Red is not interesting, but because rhinoceros, like sea urchin, is. The ripe flowering fruit, apple, pomegranate, pear, and the tree that grew in our backyard, whatever tree that is, for me, the coconut palm. That's interesting. Aliens building the pyramids is not interesting, as aliens building a shoe cabinet would be. A red shoe cabinet filled with red shoes. Red shoes are not interesting because they are red, but because shoes like wheels and doors and the standing wave vibration in a Miles Davis record. And what about the pharaohs? Pharaohs are not as much as the first man who cracked open a coconut, or the one who, with no thought to am, gave their life to the appeasement of the gods. Gods are not interesting. But what if it was a woman who cracked that coconut? And why didn't it occur at first to the wakened mind that it's not interesting? The history of limits, that is. I mean, what about those shoes and wheels and doors and cool being birthed in the midst of McCarthy and New England myths? I saw Goody Marilyn dancing naked with the devil. I saw Ozzy Osbourne live in '83. And what about the beats? Notes that drift down from clouds. We hear the rumble of a dying beat. A beat with wrath and mercy, who with brimstone lava smashed. But gods are not interesting. Blue Banana is. Not as much as the human one, who first peeled it. Blue is not so interesting, even Blue Skin, that guy who cuts hair on the Enterprise. That android, though, the one who makes us question the definition of life. Life like muskrats loving in a cornfield. Scarecrows come to life, scare children in the cornfield. That's not interesting. Those children, however, simple machines of their parents' lust, looking at the universe through eyes not yet accustomed to the spelling of words, the green of the grass, the leaves, the algae. Green is not interesting, but algae is. And why are children in a cornfield anyway? A cornfield is not a ball field. If you build it, they won't come. But what about those churchy folks who church out on the regular, going to see their maker when their time in the green and blue is time no more? Like the shaman divining, perfect human encumbrance. The witch at her cauldron, the bodhisattva at rest. The rabbi who asked, who is the most tragic character in the Bible? The guesses came briskly. Is it Jeremiah? Is it Jonah? Is it Job? The ashes of the earth are clumped in his toe jam. The most tragic character in the Bible is God. Thank you. That's it.
I can't even unmute myself. That last line. The most tragic. Cool. Thank you, Ed. So good, so fun, so thoughtful. Okay, we got two more poets to listen to today, and I'm so excited. The next person up is Karen Neuberg. Nice to see you, Karen. Your bio first. My eyes are not what they used to be. Karen Neuberg lives in Brooklyn, New York, and is the author of the full-length poetry collection Pursuit, Kelsey Press, and the chapbook The Elephants Are Asking, Last Liar. Her poems have recently appeared in Maintenant, Sure Vision, and Unbroken. She is the associate editor of the poetry journal First Literary Review East. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much, Mary, and Great Weather for Media. I'm really happy to be here. This has been a fantastic reading so far, everyone. It's just amazing. I'll start with my poem in Beacon Radiant. It's called Crying. We are crying because the children, because the birds and bees, because the rivers, because our homes, because the wars, the bombs, the wildfires, the forests, crying because the coral reefs, the reptiles and insects, the animals we love and the animals we fear, the glaciers. We are crying because family, friends, ourselves, people everywhere, all living things everywhere. We are crying and crying. We are moaning. We are mourning. We are grieving. We are wailing and keening and rending. And it is not enough. We do not know what each of us can do to make it enough. And so we go on with what is before us, what has to be done daily. We cannot stop what we are doing, and it is not enough. We know it is not enough, despite some very positive and sincere efforts and involvements. and we are afraid it is not going to be enough, not in time. And we go on, while mourning, while grieving, while crying, we go on. This is from my little chapbook, The Elephants Are Asking. It's called Information. I see another spectacle blocking my view, another fad slipping into my bed. The cave walls are filled with conflicting shadows, demanding attention in urgent and dazzling tones. How small respect has become. It fits our eyes like drones, while entertainment pumps up our need to be amused. I feel strings attaching to my heart, tugging me away from what I used to know. I'm diverted by a spin of words that cover over and are covered by. Pack of lies, pack of truths. Information pours and pours, burying us beneath ourselves. This is called Couldn't Be More. And I awaken into the seed's dream, into the bud's vision, to become a flower among flowers within a cluster of flowers, just as wind lifts my petals off in several directions at once, so that I find myself trembling across a southern province of China while tumbling over Mexico in a piñata's sweet release. My petals are taken between a child's fingers and smoothed across her cheek, then stuck to her nose just briefly before I return to find I am my own clenched teeth in a mouth pursed in judgment. How to open out of it, and again, when my attempts don't lie content, but are a winding road switchbacking up a mountain whose apex is lost in fog. And I use deep breaths to shift ajar the door of my line of vision's fraction. And on entering, I do let go. Even a flower couldn't be more open. The moment went Crystal Cathedral, and that title is a line from Diane Seuss's poem, Gertrude Stein. The moment went Crystal Cathedral, and I became a clear whistle of self, and feeling dangerously close to shattering if a storm carried anything, even a pebble. And I saw rows of pews within me filled with ancestors on one side and progeny on the other, as if at a wedding, and both sides of family were past and future, while we, the present ones, the ones of the now, were all clustered up front, holding each other up if needed or running around, especially the children. And I saw the multitude of us swimming in a river that ran like a fuselage across the plains of time, which were cluttered with houses of worship and burial grounds, and the remnants of wars and the fields of peace, gleaners at the edges, harvesting the remainders. I saw the good and the not good of time, saw time's oneness with the universe. And the crystal cathedral became clear, and the sun poured through in straight lines, housing the tiny dust motes, the litter of stars and time. And in a moment of oneness, we all rose and joined hands and sang our songs, which were filled with notes so high, the glass in the crystal cathedral cracked and slowly fell around us. And this is the strange part. It did not fall in shards, but as seeds. And as we watched, the seeds covered themselves with the waiting soil. And as we watched, some more, and the seeds germinated, and through the soil the first leaves were thrust. And we continued to watch time at work, even as we moved in our own time. And I think I have two more. This is called Twin Oaks, and this is with a nod to Joyce Mansour. Let the blue crayon have its wish to color the sky, then shape a cloud to become a kite that becomes a carpet flying back into the vestibule of the house you grew up in. rush up the stairs and into your old room and greet the twin oaks outside your window like the long-lost friends they are. See them wave, see them dance and let down their hair for you to braid into your heart. Hear them tell how they sometimes wept because they were not part of a forest or even a copse in the middle of a field of wild flowers. Scrape their sadness into a bowl of moss where mushrooms surprise morning with their unexpected presence. And when the sun dips from the other side of earth and rises where you are, step back into your life, carrying with you those twin oaks and their forest dreams plaited into your heart. And this is the last poem. Let me sing the garden. Let me sing green and stroll the garden, collect the yellows and purples, bathe in the luxury of butterfly and bee. Let the hummingbirds hum the afternoon light. Let the fireflies light the blue hour. Let me sing. Let me sing the garden. Let me be a tree. Let me reach into the song of the seasons. Let the seasons keep their pace, steady in promise. Let the promise be a garden. I'm lost in a dream with no garden. I'm lost in a world where green is lost, where creatures are lost, some who we never met or named. Let me sing the garden, sing the birds, sing the flowers. Let me sit in the crotch of a tree. Let me be a nest. Thank you.
Lovely, Karen. Lovely, and you've really managed to link our first reading, first poem that Catherine read about swimming, and the last poem that Rebecca's going to read. I don't know, among everything else she reads in the anthology, and I think with your themes of the river and seeds, it's so hopeful. It was very beautiful. And again, thank everybody for being here. And I hope you're feeling this. I know we're not all in person, but it feels very connected and very wonderful to hear your conversations with each other. It's from this end. The last poet is Rebecca Macijeski. Rebecca is the author of the chapbooks, excuse me, I'm a little mixed up here. I'm going to start again. Rebecca Macijeski is the author of the chapbooks Autobiography, Split Rock Press, and Apocryphal Girl, Pinhole Poetry. She holds a PhD from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and an MFA from Vermont College of Fine Arts. She has attended artist residencies with the Ragtail Foundation, the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts, and Art Farm, Nebraska. A Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee, her poems have appeared in the Missouri Review, Poet Lore, Barrow Street, Nimrod, The Journal, Sycamore Review, the Cincinnati Review, Puerto del Sol, and many others. Rebecca is an associate professor and coordinator of creative writing programs at Northwestern State University and Natchitoches, Louisiana. You tell I'm a Northeasterner. You'll pronounce that for me, okay, Rebecca? What is it?
Natchitoches.
What is that?
Natchitoches. I'm originally from the Northeast too, so I had to learn. Yeah.
Okay, good. Louisiana. All right, how's that? And thank you very much for ending the reading today with your wonderful piece. I'll pull it all together. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for publishing my work. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this reading. It's been wonderful to be with you all today. I'm going to save my piece from the anthology to end with. I'm going to save that for the end. That piece is titled Planting Imaginary Friends. And it sort of imagines that childhood wish moment of hoping for imaginary friends. And I use that to help me select the other poems I'm going to share, which come from sort of a strange, sort of hopeful series of poems in which I imagine a Yeti, you know, the Himalayan Bigfoot Sasquatch friend, is a kind of persona or alter ego. So he's sort of my adult imaginary friend. So I'll read a few short pieces from that, and then I'll end with Planting Imaginary Friends. Autobiography. My brain is a Yeti living at the edge of things. When I write a word, a world, I make it real. All kinds of thoughts can live there, even furry ones alone on mountains. My Yeti collects the bits of memories that fall away. You could say he lives inside the smells and colors of my nostalgia. Darjeeling tea, snail shells, sheet music, rusted roses, the blue in my childhood quilt. I made him for some reason or other, and for some reason he makes me. We find the same story in the other's face. Neither reflection is quite monster or quite girl. So someone will notice. My Yeti reads the morning newspaper and eats oatmeal alone, despite its lumpishness, the occasional flotsam of raisins. And in this gentle AM, after flossing, after gathering his long, furry legs into trousers, my Yeti goes to the public library, sneaks up the 4 flights of the fire escape, and leaves things between the pages of books. Recipes for bread pudding, silk ribbons, drawings of rare birds, flattened pansies, copies of his treatise on string theory. The world is not full enough of surprise. Yeti eats a brunch of soft-shelled crab. His sandwich has legs. From between the sourdough bread and pesto emerges a tiny orange claw, the gaping jaw of some unfortunate tyrannosaur served alongside a labrea of home fries. He dines in the front window, napkin in his lap, watching townspeople pass. Something about the sun, the way its light hits the small knuckles in his sandwich. Something about the weave of the tablecloth. Something about how the waitress pours cool water into his glass, slowly, from the side, keeping the ice from leaping out, makes him remember his mother. One Sunday, when he was young, he helped her candy violets. He walked with her out into the yard where they gathered tiny blossoms into the large pockets of their aprons. At first, she'd fill a whole tray with the white and purple stars. Then she'd lift him up and let him dip the flowers into the wet sugar. Let him place them face up to dry in delicate rows. Let him lick the sweetness that ran onto his fingers and down his arm. Something about the stillness, the lemon walls, and the restaurant's quiet eating. Something about the way Yeti crunches, bits of shell and bread clattering onto his plate, the brightly colored debris. So I have one more of this series, and then I'll end with the one from the anthology. Yeti gazing. On a clear night, he'll be up on his rooftop, tending his roses, waiting for the clouds to disperse and reveal his favorite manifesto, the night sky. Through his telescope, he'll peer into a matrix of stars and record coordinates of the deep past. He wonders whether Schrödinger and Heisenberg are out there, calculating uncertainties. He wonders, through his eyepiece, how far the Voyager compilation has traveled, carrying Mozart and human laughter toward the universe's grandly imagined edge. As crickets, unseen from his lawn, drone the tiny violins of their legs, he'll step back from his lens to lift a single bloom to his nose and breathe its pink galaxy. Morning rainwater spills from the soft cups of the petals, splashing him with cool, clear matter, a sense of opening. His fur matted where the sky touched him. And now I'll end with planting imaginary friends. She learned early the shudder that spring brought to the yard. She wondered what else might grow if you gave it to the earth to keep safe. So she grabbed an old pickle jar and searched the house for seeds. First, she found eyes, buttons, pennies, marbles, a few bottle caps scrounged from the basement. Then came the trickier stuff: fabric scraps for ears, potato noses, an oatmeal lid for a mouth. She put them each in the jar, one by one. Gathered this way, they became passengers on an unlikely bus waiting in the station of her bedroom shelf. When she was called down for dinner, they were all briefly and terribly alone. All any one of them had was their seeing or their listening, smelling or tasting. Together they made a kind of hive, almost a mind. Just when they were starting to make sense of their hum, the girl could be heard or seen or smelled or tasted running up the stairs, her own mouth red from spaghetti. Back in her room, she approached the jar with gravitas. She felt the cool smooth of the glass in her hands a minute before lifting and making her way outside. With great care, she found a spot for every seed, quickly, quietly, otherwise they wouldn't take. That night, as she held her blanket and faded to sleep, she walked the plantings in her mind, by the old tree, by the road, under the mailbox, patting each one and whispering a wish. Now it was the earth's turn. The ground would know how to wake them up. The ground would know what to do. Thanks.
Oh, that's so nice to hear that read aloud, Rebecca. That the ground would know how to wake them up. The ground would know what to do. And so ends our reading today. And thank you everybody who's been here and everybody who's been listening on Facebook. It's been a wonderful reading. I think of it more like a conversation of just poetry and prose writers speaking to each other, and all of us listening and contributing our feelings and our thoughts. Keep writing, keep hoping.